subject of employers introducing mandatory vaccination policies has been a hot topic in the past few weeks. For his thoughts, Joydeep Hor from People and Culture Strategies joins us now live. Joydeep, great to have you on. Look, it's such a difficult topic, isn't it? I know you've got some pretty decent thoughts on the topic. So tell us what you think.
Yeah, good morning. It is a hot topic, and I think the reason why this is causing so much consternation is because the government is on the one hand, the governments I should say, are on the one hand really strongly pleading and imploring people, the Australian population, to get vaccinated. However, on the question of whether employers should be mandating vaccinations within their organisations, the governments are falling short of saying that that's something that employers should be doing. So there is a little bit of mixed messaging. But what we are hearing from the governments is that they're saying, well, it's not part of our policy to require employers to mandate it, but if an employer so chooses to do that, on balance, I think we can read the tea leaves and say that the government is saying that that is okay. I've tried to provide as much assurance to my clients, and we as a firm have tried to really cut through a lot of this uncertainty and mixed messaging by saying to clients, look, if you look at this, advise employers, if you look at this from first principles, employers have a very clear obligation to ensure the health, safety and welfare of employees and others who come to their workplace. That is something that is in black and white under work health and safety laws. And if you don't comply with those obligations, there are very serious consequences. The only circumstance in which an employer can get away with not complying with those obligations is if they can prove that it would not be reasonably practical for them to introduce a particular initiative. And when you look at it from that perspective, it's really hard to say to an employer that given it is really not that difficult for an employer to mandate employees being vaccinated, it's going to be really difficult for an employer to say, well, we are still complying with our work health and safety obligations, even though we haven't mandated vaccinations. So I think while there's a lot of emotion, a lot of noise around this, the fundamental principles are that employers have a clear obligation, and this is something that not only can they do, but I think the real question for employers is this something that we have to do?
So let's say an employer doesn't mandate the vaccine policy and someone gets sick and it spreads around the office. What are the consequences then for that employer?
Well, that's right. And I think that the Prime Minister in a press conference on Friday tried to address this by saying that the state work health and safety authorities and the state legislatures needed to rewrite work health and safety laws, I'm paraphrasing here, needed to rewrite work health and safety laws so that employers were not in the gun, as it were, if that kind of incident did happen. And what that tells me, and should be telling everyone, is that the Prime Minister is acknowledging that you've got an obligation to ensure people's health, safety and welfare, and that does really equate to having a very good justification if you're not going to be introducing mandatory vaccinations, because an employer will be exposed.
Shouldn't this then just come down to the government, Joydeep, and they should just make a decision either way?
Yeah, look, I think it would certainly make things a lot easier for employers. But there's some reasons, I think, why the government is loath to interfere too much across the board in terms of what employers can and can't do in terms of the running of their workplaces. And I think this whole narrative that's been created around this almost tiered structure of saying if you're a tier 1 employer, then you're fine, but if you're down to tier 4, then maybe you're not. While I understand where it's coming from, it's not really massively helpful. I do think that what we can safely say to all businesses, all employers, is there will never be a prohibition on employers introducing a mandatory vaccinations policy. There might not be a compulsion to do so, but there will be a strong encouragement, I think, for all employers to be doing it. And I think unless the work health and safety environment changes, employers are going to have to err on the side of introducing such a policy.
So Joydeep, Qantas have just come out with some breaking news that they are mandating vaccines for all employees. What are your thoughts? I guess this is, one of the sectors that you would thought would implement this type of policy. The airlines travel, if people want to travel, then they're going to have to get vaccinated. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, not surprised. I think you will start to see a litany of employers following suit. SPC introduced this a couple of weeks ago, and that got a lot of attention. You will start to see employers introducing this in droves. And I think what's important is to the extent that people working in some of these organisations might be concerned about what that means for their employment. what I would be saying to all employers is, look, having the policy is one thing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be cavalier and brutal in relation to those individuals who might have a genuine and legitimate basis for not being able to comply with that particular policy. So introducing the policy is one thing. How you go about implementing it and how you have carve-outs and exceptions and compassion, for want of a better word, to your workforce is going to be really important for employers in terms of getting this right, because we know this is a very sensitive issue. But do not be surprised if there are a countless number of employers in the next few weeks who come out with a mandatory vaccinations policy.
Yeah, surely it is a fine line between those that have medical conditions, which means that they can't get the vaccine, and people that just don't want to get it.
That's right. And I think the policies that we're working on with our clients, with organisations, is acutely dealing with all of those different situations. And even if you've got someone who doesn't have a medical contraindicator and it's really just a personal or philosophical choice for them, employers should still be sensitive to that. And employers should still be trying to work with those employees to take them with the employer on that particular journey. But it may get to a pointy end where you just can't do anything. And that's where I think employers are going to need to take advice and be careful in terms of what they do. But hopefully those situations are the minority, and they will be the minority for the vast majority of organisations.
Joydeep, always great to check in with you. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much.